Good evening, everybody. We'll call to order. The PH1 is the public hearing. That's what we'll start out with. Ordinance O-23-06, residential rentals. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so welcome everybody. As far as in the room, we do not have anyone that signed up for public comments. Is there anyone online for the public hearing?
No hands.
Okay, so we have nothing. Council, anything? All right, we are adjourned. Oh, I'll accept the motion.
Motion to adjourn?
All right, we're adjourned. Okay, on to our second item of business and the main event for the night, our College Township Council Meeting. So I will call to order our official College Township Council Meeting, and we will start with public open discussion. And this is for anything not on the agenda for this evening, so if you would like, you can go ahead and step to the microphone, and we'll have 5 minutes. Is there anyone online either? Okay. All right, moving on to the next item. New agenda items. Does any member of council wish to add any agenda items this evening? Okay. All right, special presentation, SP1, University Area Joint Authority Annual Update. Dave Lipinski and Walter Ebaugh.
That's not Walter.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm David Lipinski, and I'm honored to be here for my annual update. It's been an interesting year for University Area Joint Authority. Our first and main purpose is to protect the environment and the people who live with it, not just in State College, but everything downstream of us. And that's got to be our primary means of why do we exist. A secondary one is to do it in a very financially prudent way and try to minimize expenses for those that are here, and to look down in the future about, well, not so much what do we need to do now, which is important, but what we might need to do in the future. So I'm going to be mentioning some projects and some numbers and statistics, and rather than have you reading along with me, there's a copy of everything I'm going to say basically to be available for you as part of the packet.
Will be.
Huh? Will be.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So first and foremost, we are in compliance with all regulations from DEP standpoint. We occasionally have little hiccups, but things are running well. To improve our performance, one of the projects we are doing is changing our method of disinfection, going from ultraviolet to an ozone process, which is more efficient and should save us over $100,000 a year in operating costs. But as in many other projects, there's glitches. It's taking time to get equipment and materials and all there. So it's coming in, and we'll have it within line, hopefully by the end of this year or early next year. The other thing this area has is growth, and we're actually looking at different areas where we may have to increase the capacity to serve areas. One is Toff Trees and Meeks Lane, because what's going to be happening there is still to be determined. There's also a need for a special study of the Puddingtown Road area because of future possible increases coming from the borough that come down through that. So this is going to take time to do the research to find out just what do we have to do, can what we have in existence meet the future demand, rather than trying to limit growth or have a problem. We're also replacing areas like Scotts Road that have reached capacity and need to be improved. So there's a great deal of work going on. In fact, there's probably close to over $30 million worth of construction in one way or another, either planned or underway at this point in time. Of the new things coming, and one of the most interesting ones is with our digesting system at the plant. We're going to be receiving bids to put a digester that can digest food waste. And we've been talking to the Center Region Solid Waste Authority about some way of co-working together where some of the food waste can come to the digester here rather than being shipped out, which would be better all the way around. The digester would also be able to produce natural gas that can be utilized to reduce costs at our facility. In a similar way that the solar system we've had for several years has reduced our cost and really improved our footprint. from a green standpoint. One of the other projects up, and one of the other projects, I did mention Meeks Lane, is tied to Tawtry's. Again, University Area Joint does not get to pick who we serve. The Center Region makes the determinations. And there's been more pressure from other people about, can we expand, where do we serve? And again, that's not a decision we at UAJA can make, but we at UAJA have to at least be doing the planning to be able to answer the questions, can you serve it now, or what will it take to be in the future? The plant may have the capacity. Right now, one of the big issues is getting the stuff to the plant. And that's one of the limitations. It's very expensive if you have to increase the size of collection system. Again, we're in the planning part for the Puddingtown Road. All this costs money. We've been very blessed up until this past year that we've not had a rate increase in, quote Corey, I think 7 years? We had not had a rate increase for 7 years. We had to have one this year, about 4%. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is the work that we're being done. And second, recently, within the last couple of years, our agreement with the borough ended. We seek to negotiate a new agreement with them. Things did not go well with that. And we're in a position right now where the borough is choosing not to pay what we're assessing them. I can't go much deeper into that because it is in the courts right now. And our emphasis when we did this and changed the methodology is fairness, to have them be rated the same way everybody else is, accommodating that they do have a collection system, but trying to make it fair all the way around. It is probable that next year there'll be another rate increase. I don't know if it'll be 4%. That's part of what our budgets are right now. But still, when you look across the board on how UAJ has served the community since its inception, it's done well, it's met state regulations, it's always been very innovative, and it's tried to do it at the lowest possible cost to the people that we serve. So that's the overall thing. Again, there's some details within the papers you received. I'll try to answer any of those questions, and those I can't, Corey can, or if you have any other questions for us. And again, thank you for allowing me to come here today. I have also just found out that we will need another person to represent College Township, as Walt Eball sent in his resignation today, I believe, to you, Adam, and to Corey. So I am the representative, and we're looking for somebody else. So thank you. Questions or any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Lipinski. Questions for Mr. Lipinski? Comments? Anyone?
Just, if no one else. So is there a rough timeline for the Puddingtown project? I know you've got planning, execution, all that kind of stuff.
Well, currently, right now, it's the study aspect.
Right.
And Corey, I'll defer to Corey, who has more of the details and can give you a better answer than I.
Great, thank you.
So as with everything, it starts out with Act 537 planning.
Right.
That's what we are into right now. Actually, tonight, the Center Region Planning Commission is looking at the task activity report, which is a description of what is going to be studied for that project. That's then goes on to DEP for approval, and then we get to start actually doing the study. Now, we have been cheating a little bit. We put out flow meters in the system to start collecting data even before this project study part went on. We expect the study part is probably going to take about 6 months to 9 months, and then it has to go through the approval process for COG. You know, that's not ever a fast process. Then it goes to DEP for final approval, and then we finally get to do whatever it is that is necessary to do. So we're looking at a lot of different alternatives, everything ranging from reducing flows, and how do you do that? Well, you remove inflow and infiltration primarily. If we can remove enough inflow and infiltration, then we won't have to dig up the Puddingtown Road section, which really at issue is the Millbrook Marsh section. Because the section that is critical is underneath the marsh. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
So that's what's being studied. It's going to be a while before we get that answer, 6 to 9 months to get that answer, then the approval process, and then whatever needs to get built, once it's approved by DEP, then it gets built.
Great. So we're looking a couple of years before you
Yes.
put a shovel in the ground?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Another one probably for you, Corey.
Okay.
So the increase, yes, thank you for no increases for all those time. This increase, what would you, do you attribute that? I mean, you mentioned the Barrow dispute, a lot of capital projects or operations. What would you?
So it's primarily an increase in costs. Everything is getting more expensive. And the other part of that is a decrease in revenue. We're not getting the revenue that we're expecting from the borough. Currently, as is noted in the sheet, the borough owes us about $1.2 million. And that number is getting bigger every time we send out a quarterly bill. So until that is resolved, we have a lot of revenue that has not been collected. The system still has to be operated. In order to stay in compliance, we have to spend money. So that means that there's going to have to be a rate increase. Well, if UAJ raises the rates on the borough, they're still not going to pay. So we have no choice but to raise the rates on everybody else in order to make up for part of that revenue. So it's two things: making up the revenue that the borough is not paying and handling the operational expenses. And the short term, because we're undertaking these projects, which will ultimately save us money, but in the short term, we have to spend a lot of money in order to save money. So there will be a short-term need to creep up the rates. Hopefully that'll be offset in the future.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Follow up to Rich's first question. Since you brought it up, Corey, the timeline, just to get more specific on the Puddintown Interceptor. This was a agenda item today at the TLU, which we forwarded unanimously, moved and supported unanimously to forward the draft TAR on. But the one question that came up that I don't know got answered was whatever gets done at Puddintown, whatever that is, has to be in line before the expanded flow from Calder heads that way. And that's anticipated, I think, to be 25, 26.
Yeah, so the borough has a schedule that outlines that the last section of the Calder project will be done in 2025, 2026, somewhere in that range. But that project cannot be completed, that last phase of that project cannot be completed until the Puddintown Road issue is dealt with. So,
Okay.
So they can build the whole thing except for that last piece.
Okay, so this can't get behind that, because that can't really, what you're saying is they can't finish that project until this is in place.
Correct.
So
Until
there
this
won't-
problem is solved, they can't finish that project.
Okay, that wasn't entirely clear today. That helps, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Just one follow-up. I can't have a report from UAJ without saying thank you for not sharing the smell in that part of the township. It was a pretty nice summer. Thank you.
Well, it wasn't without incident. We had an awful lot of things that went wrong. There were a couple times where we were robbing parts from other things to make the blower system work. Finding parts has just been ridiculous lately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are understanding of the need, and that's the last thing we want to have is odor. We know what that does, because we end up getting an awful lot of phone calls.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, guys.
One other thing just to mention, it's not in what I gave you, but one of the questions come up, how good are our rates? Are they accurate? Are they fine? We have a subcommittee that includes non-members of the board who have been looking at getting an analysis or getting a third party to analyze how do we set rates? Are they fair or are they uniformed in that way? That was going alongside with the State College Borough idea, because the question's always been coming, are we doing it the best and most efficient way and the fairest way? So we're also doing that alongside, and we would continue to do that regardless of what happens with the borough. That's part of our due diligence. So,
But that one didn't make the sheet.
That's
Well,
That's an honor.
we'll send you our mint note.
Thanks for
And as
that.
the member of the board who lives closest to you, AJ,
Yeah,
I also appreciate it. It's been a nice summer.
yeah.
So if there's nothing else, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, we'll move on to SP2. So Dr. Schneider and Mr. Kaufman. This is fire and life safety inspectors and firefighters presentation.
Mr. Chair, just a quick note. Before Dr. Schneider leaves the podium, I'd like him to give us an update on another item that we've been working on here in College Township very quickly, but not to interrupt this presentation.
Okay.
Well, I'll do that real quick if that's okay.
That's fine by me.
So, we have a hotel that's standing in a location somewhere near Sam's Club.
What's supposed to be a hotel.
Well, it's a proposed hotel.
It resembles a hotel.
So,
Yeah.
they did pick up their permit, their revised permit on June 28th. But we have noticed that, Tyvek's blowing off the building. The age of the Tyvek now has actually been exposed to the weather too long, so it can't be used anymore as a water, basically a water membrane. So we have enforcement that is meant to tackle three things. One is that membrane. The second is the debris around the building itself with the property maintenance code update that was done and went effective August 1. We have some additional tools, as well as, oddly enough, the third piece is identification of the premises. At this point, it's a standing structure and should be identified so that if emergency service or need to come to the building, they actually have an address on the building. Those three things are all in an enforcement piece that was sent to the ownership. They have 14 days to correct 2 of the 3, and the debris, they have 7 days to correct before we go into additional enforcement. So just so, the council's aware, as well as anybody who might be watching, that we're moving forward as quickly as we can to try and get that site tidied up and moving in the right direction.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Hey,
So that's your one audible, Adam.
I'm sorry.
Do you have a question?
Yeah,
Yes.
of all the things going on in the township, that's one of the things that people ask me about the most, is what's going on. So your report is very timely. Going back to the first item, the weather, what do you call it? It's the brand name of the weather?
So Tyvek's is a brand name, but people generically call the building wrap. Yeah,
Okay.
most people are referred to as Tyvek.
So they've been given a mandate to bring it up to code or up to, whatever it is. Should they not do that, what then is the enforcement, or what is the next
So
step?
they have to start construction again actively, and we measure that by inspections. So they have 6 months from the date that they picked their permit up by state law to actively be under construction, and then they have to have being called, basically calling for inspections every 6 months to keep that permit open and active. So they basically have 6 months from the 28th of June to have done enough construction to call us out for an inspection to basically prove that the building itself is actively under construction, or this permit will lapse. At that point in time, we'll go into additional enforcement potential. But either way, the building has to be considered weather tight, and we, under the property maintenance code requirements, we can enforce them having to keep the building weather tight at that point. Most of the house wrap products or the building wrap products, depending on the product itself specifically, only have, give or takes, anywhere from 4 to 12 months of life with UV exposure. So obviously at this point, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on this and making sure that we encourage them to get this completed and continue moving the construction forward on the job.
Okay, so long-term, there's a 6 month, every 6 months, there's an inspection.
If
If they don't complete-
if they're not doing enough work to get an inspection, their permit's gonna lapse again. And if their permit lapse again, they're gonna basically have to go through a re-permitting of this job again.
Okay, and that's what
And
they did in
there's a
June?
very big financial hit doing
Okay.
that.
And then short-term, they have obligations to meet, like what you just described, to keep it from falling in disrepair inside that 6-month window.
Correct.
So they can't just wait 6 months to deal with that. There are short-term thresholds to keep the site safe and not
Correct.
unsightly.
And we have
Okay.
we have some tools that came about with this, with the document that you adopted and went into effect in August 1 that allow us to do that even more timely.
Good. That's helpful, and it answers a lot of the questions that I get, and I suspect others may also get.
But I will say it is tough to nudge a construction project forward under what we have. So.
We'll allow one more question on this subject before we move on to the presentation. Yeah.
It's just more curiosity. Well,
Yeah.
you said if their permit expires again, how many times do you know by chance has their permit expired?
It's expired once.
Oh, just
Fully.
once? Okay.
And we required, they had renewed their permit post-COVID at least twice. We allowed that to happen based on what they had given us as far as reasons why construction was not able to move forward. They had gotten construction moving forward the last time, and then they allowed it to go dormant. We, at that point in time, indicated we weren't interested in renewing the permit again, and indicated that the permit had expired and posted the structure. At that point in time, they were required to go back through and obtain a new building permit. They had appealed the appeal to the appeals board about the denial of the renewal. The appeals board upheld the denial, and they went through the permitting process, and that's why they picked up the new permit and actually had to pay a whole new permit fee. And by the way, the building was brought up to current, in the new permit will be brought up to the absolute most current codes that are in place in the Commonwealth.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. All right, now on to fire and life safety.
So
Yeah.
we're proud to be here to talk about what we are proposing as a joint venture between the Center Region Code Administration and the Regional Fire Protection Program. We believe we've come up with an innovative approach to address needs in both agencies. And so I'll kind of start out and then I'll kind of turn things over to Sean. But we'll be happy to answer any questions whatsoever. We have proposed 4 new positions. Currently, the Center Region Code Administration has 1 fire and life safety inspector sitting on the books that's waiting to be filled. That was scheduled to be filled in 2024. This proposal would take that position and add to it 3 others. The positions would all be fire and life safety inspectors. Their primary report would be to the Center Region Code Administration, and they would meet all the requirements that our existing inspectors meet from a certification standpoint. But we would be selling half of their time over to the fire administration. They would have a specific job description that included both the inspection activities as well as firefighting activities. They would be scheduled on 2 10-hour days, 2 14-hour nights, and then off for 4 days. So they would come in and work for the code administration from 8 to 6 on day 1, same thing on day 2. Then on day 3, they would come in at 6 o'clock at night and work for the fire administration till 6 o'clock in the morning. The same thing on day 4, and then they would be off for 4 days. So they would be working 48 hours in a work period. That work period, because of them being firefighters, that is allowed under the FSLA regulations, but we would be paying them for all of that time. When they're working daylight hours, they would be working for the code administration. And as you look at the schedule, that basic schedule keeps kind of rotating around. You keep moving 1 day down the cycle. But it would mean that I have an inspector for 10 hours a day, every day out of that, including Saturdays and Sundays. And then the fire administration would have a firefighter every evening from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., same thing. individuals would be the on-call for the fire, or for the code administration in the evening hours, which we currently cover on overtime when we do on a call-out basis. So they would be the primary call-out and function for that overnight and be able to make a phone call to myself or their supervisor to indicate if we need to come out. But what we found is most are a phone call from the fire administration saying, hey, we need to follow up on this tomorrow. At the code administration side, we would bear all of their 100% of their expenses with respect to the code administration piece. So jointly between the four of them, they would use one vehicle because they're not on in the same shift. They'd share one desk. They would have an individual computer and iPad for them, so that way we're not worried about, making sure, well, if you took the computer with you or what you're doing as far as working and flexibility of hours, but those kinds of expenses would all be borne by the code administration. If they were daylight over the weekend, they would be stationed at one of the regional fire stations, depending on where Chief Kaufman wanted them. And so if he felt the need was at Patton, they would be at Patton. If it was here at College, they'd be here at College or a downtown station. At that point, also over the weekend, they would be functioning, if they're daylight, functioning with the Pub Ed program, and might be working on paperwork for me with the fire alarm program and so on, but they would be available for response to fire calls. So not only do you get a evening firefighter out of this, but then daylight weekends, you also have, again, a firefighter that's a paid firefighter in one of the stations that is available for emergency response. So I'll turn things over to Sean for additional information.
So I get to say Sean Kaufman, Center Region Fire Director, which is kind of fun. But thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about this. I just want to give you a little bit of background. For those who have been on council for a while, or on the board for a while, you heard my predecessor talk about this for the last several years, that we needed to get to a point where we were going to start having to hire career firefighters. When I took over this year, I didn't want to let this kind of sit still and get through another year's cycle without an opportunity to look into this, and so I approached Walt about what I thought was a unique idea of combining the inspector and firefighter positions, utilizing staff that was trained in doing fire inspections, but then in the evenings could be available to us as firefighters. Now, when we talk about a firefighter, these are not going to be individuals that are coming in with no experience. We would hire somebody who's a certified firefighter 1, also with driving experience, so that within a short period of time, they'd be able to drive apparatus. That's the primary reason for putting these people on. We often have firefighters in fire stations that don't have anybody capable of driving the fire trucks to get them to the scene. We have a tremendous volunteer support, but we have a lot of student members who are here for a period of time and leave. And so we don't always have the experienced driver operator, and that's one of the gaps that we're looking to fill. Just a little bit of history on that, kind of how I got to where we're at. The goal of the Center Region is to maintain a premier, mostly volunteer combination fire department. Okay, we have a very good volunteer fire department right now that's been kind of becoming career over the years. This is going to increase that. We're trying to maximize our volunteer hours. Just a little bit of information. 2022, we had about 89 volunteers, it fluctuates a little bit throughout the year, give over 60,000 hours of service. So when you roll that all out across that number, it's about 12 hours a week that they're putting in, so about one of our shifts a week. Now again, that includes training hours and response times and different things like that, but that's a pretty good number. So that's up from 2021 where we got about 55,000 hours. So we're getting an increase out of our volunteers. We're maximizing our volunteers. But what we identified in some of the data we collected over the last 6 months was we still have gaps in coverage. Periods of time when there's semester break, summer months, different things like that, where we have periods of time, 14 hours, where there's not a driver operator in the firehouse to drive these people to a call. Then we look like a more typical volunteer fire company where everybody's coming from home. When I joined the fire service, that's what we did. But we're paying a lot of money in this community for fire service, and we need to have dedicated people available to respond. I think our communities deserve that and expect that. So saying, well, okay, tonight's Thursday night, and I know there's 6 people on duty downstairs right now, right, able to respond, and there's 6 people in the borough station able to respond, that's great. That's a lot of volunteer hours. But Sunday night, maybe we didn't have anybody. So we gotta have a consistent fire response, fire rescue response in our community, and that's what we're trying to fill that gap. So that's the gap that we identified and are trying to fill with this. So we think it's a proactive approach, very unique approach, using the combination of the inspectors as firefighters. One of the things we've been doing for years is having career staff on duty Monday through Friday during the day. Okay, so myself, a couple assistant chiefs, a captain right now. So we have career staff Monday through Friday to be able to supplement the volunteers, and that's been working well for us. So these other gaps we're identifying are evenings between the time that the career staff leave and the time the volunteers come in. Weekends are a big hit sometimes. So that's kind of what we're using this to try to get that 24/7, 365 consistency of having a driver operator available. Walt alluded to the fact that this person, when they're on duty, will get assigned to whatever station they need to have people at. We are supplementing the volunteers. We're not taking over any of the volunteer hours. So if we have a driver operator and a full crew in the borough station and College Township needs a driver operator, we'll put that person in this station for the evening. Same thing like you mentioned with Pat Township. The other thing it allows us to do is have the, during the daytime when they're doing their inspections, have more driver operators available if we have a multiple alarm incident during the day, so we can do what we call a callback. And so we think it's a very unique idea. We don't have anything in terms of presentation to show you job descriptions yet or actual, assignments, because we didn't want to put the cart in front of the horse, because we know there's a financial impact to this, and you have to kind of give us the green light in this budget process that we're going through. We'll do that. But we really think it's time that we smooth that gap in our volunteers and we have more consistent response. So that's kind of where we're at. And I know we'll answer any questions you have.
Yeah, let's start out questions, comments. Anthony, we'll go from our left to right.
If I may, one thing,
Yeah.
so that everybody's clear. From a payment standpoint for these positions, again, 50% of the personnel costs, the direct personnel cost, is being borne by the fire administration. The other is being carried by the Center Region Code Administration, and that carries through, and we're truly carrying that cost based on fee again, not based on any tax dollars. So the Center Region Code Administration is not proposing any, subsidy of, we are still maintaining our 100%, fee-based provision, and that's part of the uniqueness of the proposal. Is we get the 4 positions, but we each get what we need out of this and allow it to function where normally it wouldn't work as well if we didn't have all 4 positions.
Okay, Anthony.
Just, two questions, in the sense that, so the proposed positions, these weren't in the last COG update. Okay.
One of them was.
One,
yes. So
Okay.
the Center Region Code Administration has had a fire and life safety inspector proposed since just prior to COVID. Because of COVID and some things that happened during that time period, we've held off. It's been physically in the budget as a 0 cost, just holding the position. And it was proposed that in 2024, so if you look back at last year's kind of discussion at this year's budget, it was actually proposed that we would be hiring them in November and starting to bring them on board for a full complement in 2024. So one of these, from a coach standpoint cost, one of the 2 that our agency is going to bear cost on was already headed for the budget.
Understood.
And on the fire side, we do currently have a vacancy that I'm holding open and hopeful, being able to kind of smooth this out over the initial phase. We're not going to try to hire the new assistant chief's position and these 2 positions as well. So I think that will help with as we get into the budgeting process.
Understood. The next one was mainly just a comment. I think, Sean, you touched on it earlier. Your predecessor used to talk about this quite a bit. And, we've come a long way in the sense of a true volunteer or full volunteer. and we're growing, and this is public safety, so I would think it's priority number one. I think it's something that should be supported. I'll end it at that.
One thing also that we did mention that this brings a major positive to is these individuals, while they're doing their inspection activities, effectively are doing pre-planning and can transfer that information. Yeah, what they're doing during the day, I have a gut feeling that the chief is going to have them be working on pre-planning on their overnight hours because they're getting that synergy between what their activities are, which is another plus that we've not had fully engaged up until now.
Thank you. Susan?
No, I've been to a couple of meetings where you shared the details on the plan, and it sounds like a great plan, and you said it well, that public safety is number one. So I really like what you've done with the combined programs. I listened to you describe the scheduling, and I followed you quickly. It makes great sense, and I really like that the fire inspectors will also be the firefighters, so they'll know where they're going and they'll know what they're doing. So I really appreciate all the work and effort that must have gone into this. So thank you very much for that, both of you.
Yeah, I just have two questions. So it's a total of 2 positions? 4. Okay, yeah, I was 4 positions. Yeah.
We're each bearing the cost of half of it. So the Center Region Concentration is going to hire 4, and I'm going to sell the equivalent of half of their time to the fire administration.
Okay.
But
Or
they'll,
contracting.
right, but they're
Yeah.
going to report to they'll report to one agency, and then when it comes for reviews and so on, their direct report at the Center Region Code Administration will reach out to the leadership at the fire administration, they'll get performance information and so on, but we would be doing the reviews and so on.
So my second question then goes with what you had touched on, Sean. You know, some nights we have a gap, right? We might not have anybody on duty. So with the creation of these 4 positions, and I know, Walt, you kind of went over the rotation a little bit, but with the creation of these 4 positions, minimally, how much would be staffed overnight, right? You know, consistent. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right,
yeah.
so with our volunteer schedule, the way we're currently running, there's a duty officer, which 2 or 3 nights a week is a career person. The other 4 nights a week or 5 nights a week, depending on our staffing, is a volunteer who's the basically officer in charge. So there's that person. There is a fire police officer that right now they have in rotation 24/7 that's on duty. And then there would be this person. Those would be the 3 guaranteed spots. One of the things that we find is that we get a lot more volunteerism when we have a driver operator available to drive somebody to a call. Why would I want to come to a firehouse and spend the night there if I don't get to go to a call? You know, so I think that will increase our numbers of volunteer hours because they have that. We also still have the live-in program, which is slightly less during the summer months, but like right now, we're fully staffed. We have 13 live-in members living in the 3 separate firehouses. So while they're not a guaranteed response, they certainly are a more regular responder than a volunteer coming from home.
So that's 3 head count minimally in each station.
Not each station,
Okay.
on duty. at
On
one
duty
time.
In the region.
across it. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so right now, we're not built out to staff all 3
Gotcha.
firehouses. The College Township station, while it has live-ins, is primarily getting the driver coming from home. And the same with Patton Township, is getting, they have live-ins there. Depending on the semester, and like right now, we have a driver operator that lives in your firehouse downstairs. So that's more likely to have somebody available to staff. The Patton Township has a driver operator, and the borough has 2 driver operators living in their program. So right now, yes, we're really good. But what we're trying to do with these positions is again, build that foundation so we have consistency across all times of year and every day.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Rich?
No, as Susan said, I've heard this a couple of times, and I once again salute the creativity and efficiency of it, and hope we can find more opportunities like this to keep stretching that clock, because that's all we're doing.
Exactly.
Eric?
This is just a heads up information. I mean, we're not making any decisions here, right?
Yeah, we're going into budget cycle, so we're trying to get.
You're just
as much
kind of
support.
greasing the skids here for
Yeah,
the
we want everybody to
process.
understand it.
Okay.
We want to provide you information so that when it comes into a decision, you're more informed. The other one is honestly, we want to know if there's any pitfalls going into it so we can research them and possibly solve them before we go into it. We've gotten feedback that overall, this feels like a good idea, but we want to find out if there are any pitfalls. Sean and I want to make sure that we've got them solved before we go into this, because again, we have put a lot of time and energy into this and feel that we're heading in the right direction. And we want you to be critical. We want you to say, hey, we're seeing this problem, or this is our concern, so that we can make sure that those are addressed.
Yeah, I understand that, and it's just that first time hearing, it's kind of hard to identify any pitfalls, so I would trust that HR committee, safety committee, and probably finance committee will be digging into the details a little more, and then we'll connect. Sounds good.
Once we're pretty comfortable with the budgetary processes moving forward, and to be honest with you, I'm working on budget right now, I'm pretty comfortable with it, so, it's my first time through with the fire budget, so if I'm comfortable with it, I'm hoping you'll be comfortable with it as well. But
We'll see about that, sir.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But, we didn't want to put a lot more effort, like I said, if everybody said, oh, this just doesn't sound like it's going to work. And we've been getting good feedback, and of course now we have to start getting to the point where we're putting, ink to paper and getting the policies worked out and having, council look at it so that we're not in any violations when it comes to any Fair Labor Standards Act or anything like that. And then obviously, once we start having career firefighters, there's opportunity for them to unionize and do things like that. So we have to have all our ducks in a row when we hire that first person, because if we don't, we can put ourselves in jeopardy. And so we understand that. We've been working with the managers on that side as well, so that we have those things addressed.
Good. I just had one thing to add, based off of, if you want to bring up any concerns. And one thing that came to my mind was, have you guys kind of, assess the labor market to see is there interest in these positions? I mean, they sound great to me, but, is there firefighters out there that want to do this?
So we have 4 volunteers that are currently working in the code administration, or former volunteers and volunteers that may be interested in the positions as they stand. That's the easiest transition. Obviously, we're going to advertise it and interview, and we actually probably have a physical aptitude and testing that has to go on with it as well, that we're kind of working through right now. But yes, so we've gauged that interest just locally, and then we've also had, I know Walt's reached out to other code agencies where people have already fire inspectors, and there's some interest there as well. So
Okay.
I think the market's right for this type of position. It's certainly, again, an opportunity from the code side where they can be hired without all the certifications. And there's a lot of people out there that have the Fire 1 certification and driver experience that may be interested in getting into the code business and that realm. So I really think it's an interesting opportunity for a lot of people in the Commonwealth. And we'd probably be looking at the Commonwealth because, again, we kind of have some unique things with our fire service.
Okay, last call for any questions or comments. None? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Can I take 1 minute of your time?
1 minute.
Just have a story. So the other night at
boy.
meeting, I
Wait,
pointed
we
out-
didn't start the timer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, less than a minute. At the Alpha Fire Company meeting, I pointed out, as a second generation fire chief and now the fire director, I pointed out my first fire chief with the Alpha Fire Company was in the room, and I explained how he helped me get to where I was at. Well, my first volunteer fire chief when I was a junior firefighter in Bollesburg was in the room, Bob Hoffman. And I just wanted to point that out to your group and thank Bob personally and publicly for all the assistance he gave me in getting me where I'm at.
Oh, well, great. Well, you can have 5 minutes to embarrass Bob. Thank you. All right, thanks a lot. All right, so we're going to move on to plans now. So we have a sketch plan from Clearwater Conservancy. All right.
Okay, that's listed as number 3 on my list. Let me get to that. Yeah, so this sketch plan is for the potential 2-lot subdivision of the Umberger Rockenbeck property. And here you can see the property and the 2 lots that would be subdivided. This property's bounded on the west by Hauserville Road, on the east by Hauserville Road, on the northwest by Old Hauserville Road, and actually on a portion of it on the southwest by Old Mill Road. This
As I said, it's the Umberger Rockenbeck property. Clearwater actually owns 2 other properties in this vicinity, one being the old farmhouse along Hauserville Road. You're familiar with the Shiloh, or the silo that sits there. And that was some of the confusion we had at the Planning Commission is later on we'll see some presentation showing on how this could work in with the other 2 properties. And there was some confusion as to what this plan actually was for. It is just for that 2-lot subdivision. But Deb Nardone from Clearwater is here, and I will let her go ahead. Deb?
Thank you. Actually, do you want to go back to the map you just had? Thank you. Deb Nardone, Executive Director at Clearwater Conservancy, and I also have Ryan Hamilton, our Lands Conservation Manager at Clearwater. And we'll both just quickly take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about this effort and then be ready to answer questions. We're not seeking any decisions. This is more of just a presentation of some future decisions that will come before you. As you know, we acquired the 1601 Hauserville property last August. And that is the property that's outlined in this map on red, immediately across the stream from College Township property that's outlined in green. And this beautiful section of Spring Creek, and again, an old historic barn and farmhouse that was owned by the Rockenbeck-Umberger family. Since we acquired the property a year ago, we've been looking really closely at the site and the kinds of ways that we can make the property open and accessible for people who are hiking or walking their dogs or angling along Spring Creek. And we're also looking at full restoration of the farmhouse and the barn so that Clearwater can be accessible and to demonstrate the kinds of conservation measures that we work hand in hand with lots of landowners. So whether it's a quarter-acre homeowner that wants to see state-of-the-art, pollinator habitat or kinds of native plants that they can put in their home, to a farmer who's interested in seeing what a riparian buffer might look like on their farmland. Those are the kinds of things we do in the community, and those are the kinds of things we would exemplify and showcase for people to come and see here. As part of this conservation effort, we did look at a parcel that was also immediately adjacent, also owned by the Rockenbeck-Umberger family. It is the triangular piece. There's a little thing right in front of you. Oh, perfect. It is this triangular piece right here. And the whole parcel is the 110 Old Hauserville Road. You have the survey map in front of you. And we'd like to subdivide that parcel and have the triangular piece come as part of our portfolio as our conservation efforts move forward. And I'll turn it over to Ryan, who can talk a little bit more about that effort.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. My name is Ryan Hamilton with Clearwater Conservancy, and Deb's kind of given an overview of kind of what we're thinking about and how we're looking at these properties in Hauserville. But tonight we're just presenting the sketch plan for your feedback on the simple subdivision. The existing parcel is about 2.6 acres. The lot one here is just under an acre, 0.95. There's an existing house, an existing garage there. That lot would stay with the family. The lot 2 here, we intend to subdivide, and that's about 1.7 acres, and Clearwater would acquire that and add that to the conservation portfolio, as Deb mentioned. So as part of our kind of sketch plan presentation, we've also discussed with staff and have been made aware of sidewalk requirements that come along with a subdivision like this. Section 180-16.1 of your sidewalk ordinance provides options for addressing this, including a deferral, a waiver, or a fee in lieu. In this case, we're seeking your feedback on a waiver would give us the most flexibility, but I think we're open to the idea of a deferred fee in lieu payment, which would allow us to bring the kind of larger the larger land development plan to you at a later date, once we've gone through significantly more planning, some more fundraising, and we're ready to do that. But in order to be able to take that step, we'd like to subdivide this small piece and be able to include that in our planning for trails and that kind of thing. The area is currently a residential neighborhood. There are no other sidewalks adjacent or nearby. Old Hauserville Road that runs right here it dead ends here. There are 2 or 3 houses on the road. The grading both along Old Hauserville Road and the bridge here is quite steep. You can see it's actually within the right-of-way on Hauserville Road there. We are not at any time planning any buildings for this parcel. It's almost entirely within the floodplain. I imagine when we bring a final subdivision plan, we can have more engineering reports and cost estimates could be brought with us at that time. But right now, we're just seeking your feedback on our initial sketch plan.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Since the meeting Tuesday night, we had talked about the rating, using our sidewalk rating system for Hauserville Road. And I think at that time we were saying it was a 14, which means it's eligible for sidewalks. One of the things that hadn't been looked at the time was Old Hauserville Road.
Right.
Lindsay went through it today. Mark and I went through it with her again the second time. It comes up with a 6. And 8 or less qualifies for a waiver on the sidewalks. We did not have that information Tuesday night for you.
Thanks for that. All right, so council, we'll start with questions, comments. Susan, we'll go with you.
I don't have questions. I watched the PC presentation, so a lot of the questions I would have had were answered during that presentation. And thank you for the update on the sidewalk rating, so that makes better sense. I was struggling with the idea of a waiver, but so you're presenting to us the idea on the sketch plan, but not yet asking us to grant the waiver, that we're considering we would grant the waivers. But I think I'm hearing you ask, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I think we have to bring a final plan and request you.
Okay, well that helps. Yes. So and that score helps tonight a bit more. So thank you. That's all I had.
All right, so we're just going to go again from our left to right. So I would be in support of a deferral for the sidewalks. For your initial plan. That's where I lie on the sidewalks. Especially with a 14 on Hauserville, right? What's our highest score?
20 something.
27 or 28.
Yeah.
But I guess, and I'll show my inexperience with subdivisions a little bit here, because my past experience with subdivisions was that the entire lot was owned by, the current owner brought the subdivision plan. You guys don't currently own this, right? This is owned by the Rockenbeck Umberger family, so they're actually subdividing their property and selling you the 1.728 acres.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But you're representing them.
That's right.
Okay. I just wanted to straighten that one out.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. That's all I have. Rich?
No, I mean, we appreciate the sketch plan and getting a little bit of a litmus test, I guess, of the flavor of council and everything. As Planning Commission noted, we've recently put in a lot of work into pedestrian master plan and stand behind it, and we have various criteria. And so the scoring was one, but that doesn't immediately say, okay, no, or whatever like that. So as you indicated, when you get further along, we're gonna need more data to support, I'm gonna need more data to support it and everything. I didn't get the opportunity to watch Tuesday's meeting, but Mr. Hoffman included a report in our packet that referenced a couple other questions. One was access to the site for pedestrian and cars. How was that discussed?
Yeah, so at this point, we're still in the process of sort of dreaming and designing the entire site. There is, I don't know if there was another map in the packet that showed some trails on the property. Sort of it's obviously not part of this subdivision or this request here, but sort of our overall plan envisions potential for some parking on this parcel and trail or pathway walking access for pedestrian circulation around the property. Would follow those sort of small orange dots around the property. Again, that's sort of getting ahead of ourselves. We're really just looking at the subdivision right now. We're not planning any parking or formal development, any development there. But that's sort of the general
Got it.
gist of it.
Staff, is it fair to say this is our first sketch plan for a subdivision?
Yeah.
Yeah, this could go through as a minor with no development being proposed, but we're running it through as a sketch plan to just get this in.
Sure. So as a development plan, it's very premature, but as a sketch plan, okay, I understand. So that's all I have, Chair.
Eric?
What Clearwater's doing out here is wonderful, first of all. What you've managed to put together out here, I think, it's just great. It's wonderful. I have no issues with the subdivision. I would, if this is indeed a sketch plan, and if you are indeed looking to make productive use of this time to get feedback, it would have been helpful to have some narrative. I don't know if that comes from you or from staff. I mean, I had 3 maps in the packet. That's it. I think if you were looking for some direction tonight on the sidewalk waiver, it would have been helpful to have some narrative explaining that, maybe explaining what the planning commission, what their thoughts on that or staff, because I don't know that like Dustin, I don't know that I can give you any definitive direction on that particular issue. But I can say that I love what you're doing out there and I support the subdivision.
Thank you, that's helpful.
We do have some PC members in the audience. One's raising his hand.
I mean, even if the narrative referred to planning commission report or meeting minutes or something.
Yeah, so on that, I didn't see what you referred to, Frank. Am I missing? Rich, sorry, Rich Frank. Am I missing the report?
It's in the supplemental.
Oh, it's in the supplemental. All right, sorry.
Basically, at the planning commission
I don't
on
look at it
Tuesday,
now.
we had no narrative either. There was a very confusing presentation. Staff did not provide narrative to us. We didn't really know what we were looking at until we had a number of questions. This is a simple subdivision. They want to buy that triangle. We then became aware, as our meeting went on, that they were looking at a sidewalk waiver or fee in lieu of, or a deferral along Houserville Road. Staff did not, they had a matrix done for the Houserville part, but not the old Houserville Road part, because we asked about that. So the meeting on Tuesday night, unfortunately for Clearwater, was very confusing. We asked a lot of questions. What they want to do here is just get the subdivision done. It's a fairly simple subdivision, okay? This triangle is in wetlands, okay? What they want to do, once they get it, is have some grass trails through the area. They also own the piece on the other side of Hauserville Road that goes down to the bridge. Okay, they want to put trails in there. These are long-term goals. They're not tomorrow. They may not be for 6 months to a year. Okay, so when we found out they're asking for waivers, they're going to do some more homework with their final subdivision plan when it comes in of how much it would cost to put sidewalks in along Hauserville. If you go out and walk that land, that is very steep. So they'll give us more information there, and their engineers are very much aware of it because we made that point to the engineer before the planning commission was over. What they're going to do with the farmhouse and the barn, that will be another approval, but it has nothing to do with this subdivision.
Okay.
If that answers your questions.
Yeah. No, that's helpful, I think.
Well, yeah. I thought you were seeking input on the sidewalk.
Well, they are
tonight.
seeking input. We looked at it as ordinance-wise, okay? We also said we need the scoring. They have to do the estimates of what the cost would be.
Right.
And staff would come back to us with the final subdivision of what they think should be done. We'd make a recommendation to this body.
Right, so you're just trying to gauge, it's fair to say you're trying to gauge where we lie on it, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think the overall theme is a little bit more information, right? Yeah, yeah.
If I may clarify, this
Yeah.
is a
Go ahead,
sketch
Susan.
plan, correct?
Yeah, it's a sketch plan.
So this is our first opportunity to have the look
Yeah.
without, so,
But to clarify, oftentimes sketch plans are used to
Yes.
weigh council's general feelings in that area, and that's
Yep.
the reason I brought up the
But
question.
Eric's got a very good point, right? We have a plan, just, a little bit down the agenda, that we saw a very detailed sketch plan about, right?
We're trying to respect the amount of time you put into making a sketch plan, and to do that, we just need to have we need to have information on the things that you're seeking feedback on.
Yeah.
And it's not you, it's
Thank you.
it's the process, but
Absolutely.
very, very supportive of what you're doing out there.
Yeah.
Don't want to lose sight of that.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, anybody else, comments? Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, I think a little bit more information, and yeah, I was, just to be honest, it kind of missed me at first what exactly we were talking about. I thought you guys were just telling us all you wanted to do, which is great, but yeah, so there is a subdivision, so thanks for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, P1, Medler Field Preliminary Final Land Development Plan.
Thank you, Dustin. This is the weight room and hitting tunnels, some very minor changes as part of this plan. It's gone through 2 staff reviews, and Planning Commission reviewed it. I don't know that they had any concerns with that at all, but we have a representative here to tell us all about it.
Well, like Dawn said, there's not a whole lot to it. It is a building addition on the...
Oh, wait, could you say your name, please?
Oh, sorry, I'm Mike Veo from Stahl Schaefer Engineering, representing Penn State. Do you have C-103? Perfect. We are looking to put a indoor batting tunnel facility off of the first baseline at Medler Field, and pushing that stadium outward. We need to provide additional sidewalk, concrete, and move some handicap parking spaces from the south side of the site up around to the northeast. In a nutshell, that's what we're doing. We have a couple stormwater vaults to manage the additional impervious area stormwater, and relocating one water line across the foundation there.
Okay.
There's not much to it.
All right. Questions, comments, council? Mr. Frank?
No, I'm familiar with the site and what it looks like you're trying to do. I mean, I defer to staff Any concerns, but I haven't heard any.
No.
Yeah, same here. I mean, there is something that trips the threshold of a land development plan, but conceptually, this could almost, for me, be a staff level
Minor.
approval.
Yeah, I had no questions, I forgot to say that. Anthony? Susan?
No.
Okay. All right, so we do have some action to take, if anyone wants to go ahead with that.
Mr. Chair, I'd move the council approve the Medler Field Weight Room and Hitting Tunnels preliminary final land development plan dated June 23rd, 2023, and last revised July 28th, 2023, subject to the following conditions. One, within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions must be satisfied, final signatures must be obtained, and the plan must be recorded with the Center County Recorder of Deeds Office. Failure to meet the 90-day recordation time requirement will render the plan null and void. 2, pay all outstanding review fees. 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer any outstanding plan review comments from staff. 4, fully comply with College Township Code Section 180-12. 5, provide proof of MPDES approval. And finally, 6, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of the conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. It was a lot of sitting for a little bit of time. All right, P2, Summit Park preliminary subdivision plan.
Okay, this is a plan which, as was noted a while ago, has gone through council during the sketch plan phase. It went through planning commission and actually planning commission saw it here a couple weeks ago and had no major concerns that I recall. One item did come up when it was at the planning commission is we had Stephen Beatty, who is the executive director of the CEDACOG Joint Rail Authority, come to the meeting, and his concern was, if you look at the plan, a plan that shows the right-of-way proposed, the right-of-way being proposed to tie out onto College Avenue actually stops at the railroad. Well, the developer can't propose dedicating right-of-way that he doesn't own. So we talked at the meeting about, we understood that we would need to get a right-of-way across the railroad. There is actually a meeting set up next week, I believe, Bob, or is it the following week?
The following Monday. Okay,
the following Monday, we are going to meet with the Pennsylvania Utility Commission representative. There'll be, I imagine, Stephen Beatty from the Joint Rail Authority and the developer and the township, and we'll discuss how that right-of-way would actually be obtained from the railroad. There may be some issues.
Don, where is that? Can you laser point that exactly while we're talking about it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right there.
Okay, thank you.
But anyhow, lost my train of thought. We will be meeting to discuss how that transaction would take place, but there may be some concerns that once this crossing, which is now a private crossing, becomes a public crossing, there may be additional requirements from the PUC and the Joint Rail Authority as to what other measures would need to be taken. One of the concerns in this area is that that crossing is so close to College Avenue, it's a little tough to have the arms come down kind of thing. I think we'll end up with something similar to what is being proposed with Struble Road now, and actually Transfer Road, that is complete, I believe. There was some work done there. But anyhow, that's something that will be brought up 2 weeks from now. We're here just to talk about what is being proposed by the developer on this project, and we have Bob Myers here who will give us all the information we need.
All right, Mr. Myers.
Yeah, Bob Myers with Hull Baker Engineering. Like Don said, I guess just to continue with what he said there, my understanding is, with talking with the railroad, is like they can't say no, we can't have the crossing. Like basically, it's just to flush out what has to happen to make it a public crossing. You know, the railroad's biggest concern is, you know, when it's a private crossing, you know, everything's pushed back to the landowner, the maintenance and upkeep. When it goes to a public crossing, the maintenance and upkeep goes to the railroad. So the railroad doesn't want a crossing that was done, you know, 20 years ago. They would like to have a crossing that's been updated, and, you know, if they're going to take it over, they want to make sure everything's right today, you know, moving forward. Currently, we're proposing a 12-lot subdivision, and actually, just in the last couple of days, ownership has changed, and we're going to be removing these 3 lots. These 3 lots will go back to Lot 1. So there was an issue. There's a couple buildings on these lots that the owners currently have rented, and, you know, we had them shown on the preliminary plan they were going to stay there. You know, and the buildings would need to be demoed prior to the final plan. You know, at this point, they do not have any possible sales of those lots, so it's beneficial for them to, you know, continue to rent them at this time. So they're gonna, you know, the next rendition of the plan will have, you know, those 3 lots removed as part of Lot 1. So the whole thing with the demo and stuff, that'll go away. Public water, you know, throughout the system, we'll be connecting over to Stewart Drive. You know, stormwater, public sanitary sewer. We have not been able to submit our MPDS permit currently because there's a PNDI hit we submitted the stuff, but the one entity, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, has not replied back, so we can't kind of move forward with a couple of the items until, you know, we get our PNDI hit resolved. But I guess if you guys have any questions, feel free.
Okay. We'll start there.
I'm sorry, maybe
Yeah,
one thing I do need to point out that's sort of unique about this plan is right now the roads within the property owned by the developer will have sidewalks on both sides and be built to the current township standards. But there is a portion of Stewart Drive that we currently own, but was never upgraded. If you go down Stewart Drive, if you're familiar with it, you get to Cleveland Brothers, and it's improved up to that point. And from that point on, there's just a gravel path road that goes over to the developer's property. The one thing that's slightly different is we're not saying to them, that has to be brought up to the current standards as far as curbing and things like that. We want it brought up to what the existing Stewart Drive is. So it will match what is there existing. And that's the only thing that's sort of odd or unique about this. I'm not sure of any other right-of-way that we have that we didn't improve at the time we got the right-of-way. But in this case, that was done. That area was used as a haul road at one point, apparently, when there was some major work going on at the Corning. So there's a great base there now. It's just it was never paved. So we're telling them pave it to the same width, do shoulders, but we're not making them match what would actually be done on the developer's property. There's no sidewalks proposed in that section. Now, it may be that when there's some lots in there that haven't been developed. As those lots would be developed, at that point, we could ask for sidewalks. So I just thought I'd bring that up because that's the one thing.
They're specifically asking for a deferral on that, right? On that, or it's just not, yeah.
They're not proposing to put those sidewalks in. Like I say, that would be done when those lots are developed.
Which is a deferral.
Well,
It's
yes.
an off-site, really.
Well, it's really, it's off-site, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Eric.
Yeah, 3 questions. I'll ask the first 2 together because I think there's some overlap. The road that you're referring to, so I understand on, that the township owns the piece that's off-site, right? Or it's
Correct.
It's
already been dedicated, yes.
The right-of-way's been dedicated?
Yes.
Okay. So we could do whatever we want there, and it's not really a developer's responsibility because it's off-site.
Yeah, but we're trying to get something out.
No, we're encouraging.
Yes,
So it's the same.
And the developer is willing to do such.
The property, it's two different sites, but the same property owner. Is that why we're talking about this?
No, for us to do what we want to do, we need to have public roads. And to, like, we can't run a cul-de-sac this long and serve this many lots
Yeah. Without secondary access?
without secondary access. So it's behoove my client to provide the access and tie it into Stewart Drive, which provides two means of access. You know, the cul-de-sac length is not too long, you know, and it just, there's a snowball effect down through the ordinance, so,
Okay.
you know.
And it gives us a loop.
And in order to meet that criteria of secondary access, that piece can be gravel.
Not based on the number of lots it would serve.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand this here. So somebody has to pave it. We're going, or somebody's going to pave it, either township or the developer. Is that?
The developer,
Yes.
that's part of the
To meet the
plan. And as
cul-de-sac.
part of the plan, and in order to address the access issue, the developer has agreed of their own volition to do the paving work.
Right, but not put sidewalks and curbing in?
That is correct. They're paving to the standards that presently exist on the existing
Right.
portion of
Stewart Drive.
Stewart.
Or the landscaping portion, you know, along
Yes.
the streets,
Okay.
because all the lots adjacent to that portion of Stewart Drive are undeveloped. So at whatever point they are developed, each landowner can be put on the hook to put the curbing, sidewalk, trees in as the, you know, as they're being developed.
Yep, understand all that. In order to meet the cul-de-sac secondary access, we don't need sidewalks and curbing, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was understood. The second piece of that question, is there anything else on this, anything of significance that we didn't cover in the sketch plan? I mean, we had a pretty detailed sketch plan review and kind of nodded it.
No, I don't think there's anything, other than the fact that they're going to eliminate lots 2, 3, and 4 and leave them part of 1. So other than that, this is almost exactly what you would have
Okay.
seen in the sketch plan.
That's what I thought, but I couldn't remember. So that kind of, to me, really simplifies tonight's discussion from my standpoint, because we'd already.
Right, and the change of lots just literally happened this week. It was, you know, they kind of decided that they want to keep those lots just for the fact that they don't have prospective buyers, and, you know, they're getting paid well to lease the buildings, so why take away the revenue, you know, when you can't physically, you know, sell the, you know, you don't have the lots sold. Other lots, they have, you know, they have prospective buyers for some of the lots, and, you know, so they want to try and once the road's built, like, those lots can be done as minor subdivisions because there's no improvements to be required, so it makes kind of the process easier in the future, you know, to take those off, but.
Understand that. The last piece, then, you covered the part with the rail crossing. So explain to me again, just as briefly as you can, why CEDACOG need, or they desire improvements to be made. You think they desire improvements to be made, or anticipating they desire improvements to be made to the crossing because it's going to be turned over to the town, the road's going to be turned over to the township?
Correct. My understanding, the way Mr. Beatty explained it to me was, whenever Stuckey was created, there was a private agreement of maintenance and upkeep for that crossing, you know, with my owner, you know, the owner of the property. But once a crossing is made public, the owner, you know, the maintenance of the road goes to the railroad. It's their, you know, it's their baby to take care of. So it's in their best interest that prior to it being dedicated or taken over, or, you know, being dedicated to the township, which he said they can't stop it. It has to happen. It's just the process goes through the PUC, but it's in their best interest that, you know, the crossing is brought up to today's standards, you know, as best they can, because they, you know, the railroad doesn't, as he put it to me, the railroad doesn't have any skin in the game. They, you know, they are not gonna be making money off this property. The siding was taken off, so, they aren't gonna be making any money off the property unless something comes in and changes. But, so the railroad's point of view is they wanna get as much done to this crossing as they can, just like the township, a township or anything else would, because they are not, making anything off of it. So they want to try and get it brought up to date, to the best standards as it can. They left it go whenever Stuckey went in because, there was an agreement in place that the financial burden of the improvements would be done by the property owner and not them. But once it goes public, that goes to them, and they ultimately don't
So
want
it's
to.
a little like the turnback program with PennDOT, or if somebody wanted to give us a public road, we would expect them to bring it up to spec.
We
Right.
get something out of it. and-
Exactly, that's kind of exactly,
So
that's a good
We're
term.
just on the other end of that.
Yeah,
Right now, it's not a public road. So
Right.
basically, it's a private
Understand.
road. So once it goes as a dedicated road, the railroad does not want the responsibility of the public access unless it's done through the PUC.
That's all I had.
Before we go to Anthony, I just want to make clear, can we take action on the recommended motion with the significant changes in lots 2, 3, and 4 tonight?
This is something, you could either remand it back to planning commission, or you could move this along, because this is lessening the subdivision.
Okay.
and it's actually getting rid of
Nonconformities, which
Yes.
we're holding this up with the locations of
clear that
the
Right.
currently rented buildings.
Which we
So-
included in one of our comment letters, so they're really trying to respond to that, so.
Yes. So council does have the purview, if you want to kick it back to planning commission to look at it, but the changes are minor enough
Okay.
that you could move this on
All right.
with those 3 lots being removed.
All right, Anthony.
I had 2 questions. Mr. Chair touched on the first. So if they do want to subdivide them in the future, they would have to come back.
Yep.
Okay. And then the second question, I guess I'm going to take a page out of Susan's. As the newest member of council. Yes. Yes.
With an
Deferral versus waiver on sidewalks, because in reading through this, I saw in the motion, they're requesting a deferral on the plants and like trees, plants, and sidewalks. But then in reading their letter, they're noting that the sidewalks can be built in the future, but they also note that that parcel on Stewart Drive, they're using the verbiage of, because there are already no sidewalks, and more than likely there will not be.
No, that's actually a great
Okay.
question. Because what we didn't talk about is, like when we do a residential subdivision, the developer puts in the road, the curbs, but he doesn't put in the sidewalks, he doesn't put in the street trees at that time. And the reason for that is each lot is sold and they decide where they want their driveway. At that point, they do the curb cut where they want the driveway, and they do the street trees so they're not in the middle of the driveway. And they're asking, and that, we do that every time on a residential subdivision. It really hasn't come up with a subdivision like this, but we're saying it sort of makes sense to do it the same way, because if the the owner of lot 8 wants to build a driveway and it's right where we have a sidewalk, he's gonna have to destroy a big section of the sidewalk to put his driveway in. And if there's a street tree there and it's been 4 or 5 years, it's a nice big tree, it might not be transplantable. So with this subdivision, we are saying as each lot develops, they will be responsible for putting in street trees and the sidewalks. And at such point, I believe we said 80%.
80%
Or
or
five-
5 years.
Yeah, or 5 years. At that point, they do them all. And that's the same with the subdivision, like Stearns Crossing, phases 1 through 5, they went years, and finally they got up around 70, 80%. We said, okay, finish the sidewalks and do the street trees. Yeah, that, I forgot to bring that up. That is what we're saying for all the roadway within the development.
So that's a deferral.
Yeah.
That's a deferral.
And that I understand, and thanks for the explanation on the deferral. But they're noting the northern side of Stewart Drive. currently not having sidewalks and more than unlikely to. I have to pull up what their
Yeah, that's
verbiage is in the letter.
that's in the neighborhood of Cleveland Brothers and all those. So those lots have already been developed. So unless they come back with another land development, to change something on the lot, like the township can't enforce them to put sidewalks on that section of Stewart Drive.
Well, and that's, there's already property owners there.
At this time.
Yeah.
Okay, I just needed to get up to speed.
Yeah, that's
on a few
another
things.
nuance there.
And especially with reference to that, I mean, at this time, we can say no sidewalks, but as we're having them develop a road and whatnot, but in any event, no, those were my questions, thank you.
Okay. Susan?
So as the least experienced member of council, no, I don't have any questions because I think the discussion has been very helpful, and also the letter and the plans and having reviewed it before has made sense. And so it sounds like we do have, if those lots are to be subdivided in the future, then the developer will come back to have that conversation at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything that happens on Stewart Road will happen at a future time. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I had no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich?
Yeah, the sketch plan process, we worked through a lot of these and appreciate that. Do like the 80% or 5 years. Just identifying, and it's de minimis, is in your August 7th letter, there's or within 95 years of approval.
I did see that.
Just to confirm, both are 5.
I'm looking at the plan note now, and it does say 5.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
not 95.
Yeah, there was
So
definitely a typo there.
Yeah, so just confirming that, but other than
95
that,
years is
conceptually,
probably not.
yeah, we're probably not gonna do that. But yeah, conceptually, I like what we're doing here.
All right, thanks. Okay. We have recommended motion. Anybody wants to take a stab at it?
I'll make a motion. I recommend that council move to approve the Summit Park preliminary subdivision plan dated July 14th, 2023, and last revised August 7th, 2023, subject to the following conditions. 1, within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions must be satisfied and final signatures must be obtained. 2, pay all outstanding review fees. 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer any outstanding plan review comments from staff. 4, post surety as approved by the township engineer. 5, recommend council approve the sidewalk and tree planting deferral request. 6, provide proof of NPDES approval. 7, add a note to the plan that the public right-of-way for Summit Industrial Drive must extend to State Route 26, College Avenue, by agreement between the township railway developer and PennDOT as approved by PUC and must be obtained prior to final plan approval. And 8, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of the conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second do we need to add that that's reverting back to lot 1? Or those are?
Yeah, there should be, there should be another condition.
There should be another
or
condition.
Recognition in the motion that lots.
Well, yeah.
Lots 2, 3, and 4, as reflected in the plan, are being removed from the subdivision. Lots 2, 3, and 4 will revert to.
Will remain
parent
part of lot 1.
What Adam said.
So,
Well, why don't you go ahead second, and then we'll just amend the motion.
Second.
All right. So, anyone want to propose the amendment, as Adam had said?
Mr. Chair, I propose that we amend the current motion to identify as condition 9 that lots 2, 3, and 4 will remain as part of lot 1 as part of this preliminary plan.
Good. Okay, we have an amendment motion. Do we have a second on that?
second.
All right, we will vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, none opposed. All right, now we will come back to the amended motion. All those in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, none opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving on to manager's update, our favorite part of the night, reports. Yes.
I hate to disappoint you, but I really don't have anything to add to the written report that was submitted in the packet, but I'd be very happy to try to answer any questions the members of council might have.
Questions for the manager? Okay. Moving on to COG Regional County Liaison Reports. We had a few meetings. I'll just cover, I had an executive meeting for COG between the time, we had our last meeting, but we pretty much covered everything in our general forum meeting that was part of that executive meeting. So I did not write a report. So we had Parks and Rec Governance. Rich, anything for that?
We continued on our path, trying to find a better way to eat the authority elephant, and we came through some various, identified various issues that we're going to try and resolve. We're going to distill in everything. Mostly it came down to overlap, oversight. There's a strong motion to kill the Parks Capital Committee. And there's also discussion about ultimately a foundation for parks.
Okay. All right, any questions for Rich? All right, moving on, and then I had on the list too that Eric, you attended a Lucy meeting today.
Yeah, I'll just read the report I sent out. That'd be the quickest thing to do. There was 2 items on the agenda. The first was the draft task activity report of the TAR. You heard from Corey earlier tonight about that. The borough's approved high-rise construction through 2026 required an increase in sizing of the upstream Calderway sanitary sewer. Once all that new sanitary sewage flow starts downstream towards the marsh was identified as a potential piece of limited capacity, and of course no one wants to see that become an issue down there, an overflow into the marsh. Concerns have been expressed by College Township, Trout Unlimited, and Clearwater Conservancy over the impact to the marsh and boardwalk, stream rehab, and everything else. If they need to dig up the line to upgrade it, and that's what you heard Corey referring to. DEP requires that that report be submitted and approved by DEP prior to the formal submittal of the Act 537 plan study. That's what they were talking about tonight is the TAR. Center Region Planning Agency staff provided the background and process at the meeting to be followed during the preparation of the TAR, along with responses and comments received on the draft so far. College Township did provide some detailed comments. Most of the comments to date were on the potential impacts to the Millbrook Marsh Nature Center if the approved alternatives were to traverse the marsh, which they're very likely to do because it needs to flow downhill, and that's the low point. While those entities' comments were all concerning, they all agreed that UAJA and their consultants should move forward with submitting the TAR to DEP for approval due to the commitment from UAJA and Center Region Planning Agency staff to continue these discussions over the concerns expressed by the entities, including College Township. Therefore, a motion to authorize the UAJA and its consultant to submit the draft TAR to the Puddintown Road Sewer Interceptor to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental, to DEP, for their consideration was unanimously approved. The second item on today's agenda was the Penn State Applied Research Lab Master Plan, very similar presentation that we saw. The committee received a presentation from Penn State, like the one College Township Council received at our August 3rd meeting. Comments were positive with similar questions asked, similar to the ones we asked at our meeting. A couple of new questions asked at this meeting that I thought were interesting were one on stormwater, and secondly, on the specific timeline for vacating and or disposing of the current off-campus ARL sites, primarily the buildings on Science Park and Research Drive. The representative from Ferguson was, understandably curious what Penn State's plans were. The good news, I suppose, on that particular issue was that those are the newest buildings, or they've been significantly rehabilitated more recently. So Penn State has noted they expect they will be the very last ones to come offline and get relocated. Interestingly enough, the buildings that are closest or beyond their useful life are all on the core campus. So what we saw in the master plan, the buildings they can build currently within the PRBD and in what we could expand to the PRDB that's still in the growth boundary would all likely be spots to relocate current on-campus ARL facilities. So those would stay where they're at probably for at least 10, maybe even 20 years. And then the last thing that was brought up was some questions on what, if any, plans were considered for alternative energy strategies to be integrated out in that site. And of course, that's often the distance away. We're just looking at master planning at this point. Those would be issues that would come up more and fall to us at land development plan stage.
Okay.
That's it.
Questions for Eric? Thanks, Eric. So, Mike, did you attend the solar power purchasing?
I did, yeah. For those that are interested at this point, the schedule does continue to shift. There's been some issues with legal review with the solicitor, and then also some information sharing problems with one of the potential vendors. So the overall schedule for the solar power purchasing agreement has shifted out into November at this point, which poses a bit of a problem for College Township in that our existing energy contract expires in that same time period. So we'll see, we're kind of in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment as to what happens over the next month. I did express to the working group that there were some concerns about the timeline as it's continued to shift out. One of the factors that we have to be mindful of is the energy market is actually coming back towards us in our favor. Most recent quotes, we're currently locked into a contract of about 8.7 cents, and now the most recent estimate that I've seen is 6.9 cents. So the market's actually coming back in favor of us. All that to be said is, we're hopeful that this continues on the path that it's on and we make positive progress, but there's a lot of factors at play at the moment, and I can't say with any certainty what this timeline is going to look like and how that may impact what College Township and you in particular has to do in relation to an energy contract extension moving forward. So there's a lot coming on this, and I'm hoping that the next time we get together, hopefully in October when we talk about this again, that I have some positive news to provide.
Okay, thanks. All right, council, or am I missing any reports that anyone meetings attended? Okay. All right, we'll move on to PC. Mr. Hoffman.
I'd like to get 8 cents. Where can I get 8 cents a kilowatt hour?
Well, good evening. I had a real speech here about the subdivision, and my distinguished colleague here took all the air out of my speech. But I want to note a couple of things. Number one, we do heavily support the effort of the subdivision, and we realize that it is a subdivision. So there's no question about that. But we spent an hour on this subject, and it would have been very appropriate to have a narrative. And I think that staff should request from applicants that they develop that narrative, because it's part of their thinking and part of their justification for coming in front of Planning Commissioner Council. So I think that you should demand that they provide you with some, and we've had them in the past, with sketch plans. And so recommendation number one, lesson learned. We spent a lot of time on it, and I think that some of that time could have been, we wouldn't have had to because of a narrative, a good narrative. I disagree just a little bit with, again, my distinguished colleague. We are a planning commission. So when people come in front of us with a sketch plan in particular, it's nice to know that if they have phasing or they're thinking about things, that we kind of get a glimpse of what that might be. We all know that it's just a kind of a dream, but at least put that on paper so that we can understand the timing and the progress and how things might fit together. That's what planning commissions think of, not just the zoning and not just, we think about what's going to happen and how it might fit together. The one thing that we came up with, we're very sensitive about that sidewalk issue. That's difficult. There's no sidewalks down there, and we recognize that. And so if they do their, the applicant, does their procedure as prescribed by what we've already passed, in other words, give us some engineering, give us some facts, then we can kind of talk about other ways. Because the thing that we're talking about is connectivity. Pedestrian might be minimal because it's along the road, or it might not be, it might be dangerous, or it's in topography. If they're having these trails, people are going to want to go there. So how do they get there? Well, that's something that we need to discuss, or they need to tell us if they think they can do it. But the other thing is, if the phase one goes through and they develop those first kind of walking trails, where are people going to park? It might be nice to say, we're not going to put that on the floodplain, but where could it go so that people driving there to walk their dogs or do whatever, such as in other places in the township, they have a place to park. And that was one of our concerns as Planning Commission, looking ahead. You get the first phase done, and you'll be excited to want to do it. Where people park, or how do they get there? And I think the applicants are sensitive about that. It's just that they need to, we hope that they would address those issues when they come in front of us again. So that's about it. Ed, did I miss anything?
No.
All right, questions for PC. I guess I'll go first. Bob, I really appreciate the comment on Clearwater on the plan and that connectivity, and something just sparked in me when you said that, right? When you look at that triangular thing, right? The sidewalk is required along, Houserville Road, but very may not be feasible, but it's all about connectivity, right? And where could they park? People could park at the old house, right?
Yes.
So why not maybe a sidewalk along that side onto Old Houserville Road?
So they could park.
So they could actually access the trails, right?
That's a creative idea, and that's the kind of thing that we want to hear.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. Rich?
No, thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, Bob, I support your expectations on a sketch plan. It is the time, even if it's a subdivision, it is the time to toss out and get some feedback from council on things that you might have to spend time and effort on in the land development plan. And I think you can appreciate that. You'd like a little bit of direction, and that's why you go through the sketch plan before you invest a lot of time and energy and cost into engineering, if you can help it and get some feedback. So you're right, the narrative would have helped if they wanted feedback on that. Otherwise, you're not making it as efficient use of their time as possible.
Yep, totally agree.
I would like to make one comment. Here we have a nonprofit company that isn't in the business of being a developer. So for them to come in with a narrative, it's really our job as a staff to help them develop a narrative so it would be perfectly clear, not just to this body, but also to the planning commission. We got this with the same thing you did, as Dustin said, here's a subdivision plan, here's some pictures, what are we looking at? So we had the same thing, so if we want narrative, and we have someone who is very inexperienced, as these people are, then we should provide the help to them create a narrative.
Yeah, one footnote for that. They have communicated, as I understand it, with an architect to kind of think about some of the bigger pictures, especially the barn and that activity. So there is some dialogue with someone that's trained, or should be.
But
So,
that's for when they rehab the barn and the house. So that's down the road.
Yeah. We'll let, let's go on. Anthony.
Okay.
We'll just have council have my comments.
Okay.
First, Bob, thank you
Appreciate
for your
it, guys.
narrative. Thank you for your comments here. They're well received. I do disagree with what Ed had just said with reference to, I'll say, whose role or responsibility it is with reference to when we have folks coming in. Understanding the roles and responsibilities, though they're a nonprofit, they can hire folks to do this. Nonprofits make money and such. So there's that understanding. But Bob's comments are spot on. You know, yeah, they should come in with a narrative. They should come in with what their expectations would be or what they desire, because that's all it is. We desire X, Y, or Z. How can we get there?
It could be 3 sentences.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint in a book. Just what is it you're looking for us?
right.
Correct, and that's their responsibility to confirm that.
The onus is on them, yes, definitely.
But I think it's also our responsibility as a township and also.
Ed, I'll just ask you, I'm gonna let you make one more comment, that's it.
I also think it's our responsibility to help our clients in this township that's doing something good for the community to make things perfectly clear to the approval bodies.
Well, I think we did. That's the sketch plan process. So we're in that right now. We're not gonna stop talking to them. All right, Susan.
Thank you for your report again, Mr. Hoffman.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it very much. And I think that the point has been made very clear, that a narrative will be needed when we get the sketch plans. And so I appreciate the staff being mindful of that, and I have every confidence that every sketch plan that comes forward in the future will have that narrative.
Rich?
What Susan said.
Okay, moving on. All right, staff, is there any other reports you want to bring to our attention? Okay.
None that I'm aware of.
All right, DEI.
Oh, I do have one more thing. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, his time is used up.
All right, Bob, you got one more thing. You get one too. Ed got one, you get one.
I'm sorry. One other item that came up. I have to be very blunt here to say that the kind of the chemistry right now in the planning commission isn't good. We're low morale. I'm not saying anything about what you have done on council. I'm thinking of the whole process that we've run into. I think that we were very concerned that at the last meeting, we were all excited about that special meeting that you had to discuss the subdivision and the ordinances down at Shiloh. We didn't hear anything, we didn't get a report, we had to kind of ask, and then all of a sudden we got information from staff. I think it would have been a lot more appreciated if we would have gotten, or received, that's a bad word, received something written about how your deliberations went, so that we would understand the decision that you made, or how you agreed to it. So I'm kind of saying that I am recommending right now that we do have a meeting between the planning commission and council so that we can vent ourselves, that we don't lose any members, and that we can then continue, because we have a lot of good members on that planning commission, and I'm really having trouble listening to some of the concerns that I'm getting, and we need to turn that around. And so I'm asking that we have, I know you're busy, I know you have so many meetings, and I can understand that, but we need to stop this right away, this negative feeling that we got. So
Rich.
that's a recommendation.
Thanks, Bob. Rich, you comment?
Mr. Hoffman, was Planning Commission aware that there was going to be the special meeting?
We didn't know when it was going to be. Lindsay said it was made public, it's a public meeting, but
Yes.
we didn't know about it, or what time it was or when. I'm talking with what I think is the consensus of the planning commission.
I can vouch for the fact that there was not any particularly special effort that was made to reach out to the planning commission in terms of scheduling the special hearing or making them specifically aware of it. I went through regular advertising. It was a legitimate public meeting, advertised in the paper, all that. But to Bob's point, there wasn't any special particular outreach that was done, to the best of my knowledge, with respect to the special meeting of the planning commission.
But we had a liaison here at that meeting that we discussed a special meeting, correct?
I think that they were aware that there was going to be a special meeting. I think again, the scheduling thereof was what was really up in the air, and at the time that it was at least noted during the liaison's presence, there was not a date that had been identified. And so I can say that when that date was finally advertised, and you all understand and know what needs to be done to try to find the dates that work for folks, there was not a special outreach that was done, and that was an oversight. That was a mistake. And I take responsibility for that.
Hear your recommendation, definitely hear your recommendation, Mr. Hoffman, and so we'll look to we're overdue for a joint meeting. Last time we had one, we talked about having more joint meetings, right? And perhaps, maybe this is, I think we'll have to have some further discussion on what the agenda would be. Maybe it's more of a quote-unquote work session to talk about how we work together, right, and figure out some vetting things. Council, any remarks? Any further remarks? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I asked the question, so I'd follow up. There was a hiccup. We would have assumed you would have been advised of when it was, especially because we would have anticipated having a liaison at that meeting.
Yeah, there was some confusion there. I think that at the council meeting, you talked about the special meeting. And I don't know if I had mentioned, do you want a liaison, or are we invited? I'm not sure we did that.
Sure.
But that question came up at the PC meeting. Why didn't we have someone there? And that's what generated this whole conversation.
Right. We'll get it figured out.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Thank you. All right, moving on. DEIB reports. Do you have any DEIB, members of council or staff?
Just a couple quick notes. Again, call to your attention, we've already taken action on this. We are in Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, and Hispanic Heritage Month kicks off on September 15th.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to consent agenda. All right, so moving on to consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of CA1, which is the approval of minutes from the August 17th, 2023 regular meeting, the August 28th, 2023 special meeting, the August 29th, 2023 special meeting. CA2 is correspondence and receipt and approval of an email. A is an email from Tom Songer dated July 26, 2023 regarding R1 zoning at Mount Nittany Manor. B is an email from Daniel Materna dated August 18, 2023 regarding the casino. C is a letter from Spring Creek Watershed Commission dated August 9th, 2023 regarding the 2024 annual budget. D is an email from Carlos Stilson dated August 31st, 2023 regarding no parking signs, Spring Creek Park. E is an email from the, oh, help me with this acronym, guys. Thank you, what Jen said. Center County Association of Township Officials, yes. All right, dated August 31st, 2023 regarding scholarship awards and resolutions form. And F is a letter from Clearwater Conservancy dated August 18th, 2023 regarding annual easement monitoring for Thompson Woods Preserve. CA3 consists of one item. A is a contract 23-11, the pedestrian bridge heating system bid awarded to PBCI Allen Mechanical and Electrical in the amount of $53,046.21. Do any members of council wish for any of these items to be pulled?
I would like CA2D pulled.
Was that D?
D.
D. Okay.
Eric, did you have?
Anything you want to pull in, Eric?
I would, CA1A and CA3.
Okay. Anthony, anything?
None.
Okay.
There's more than, okay, never mind.
Okay.
I'm just gonna check my notes. Wait, nobody wants to pull my letter and myself?
I was gonna make a comment. I have it circled to make a comment, but I wasn't gonna pull it.
All right.
Note to self.
All right. Okay, so we have, I will entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda minus CA2A, D, and CA3.
So moved.
You said CA1A?
1A, right?
Oh, 1A.
Yes.
1A. You wanted 1A, not CA2A.
We're not pulling CA2A, are we?
No, I'm not.
CA1A.
And CA3,
All right.
but yeah.
All right. So CA1A will be pulled, CA2D will be pulled, and CA3.
Yes.
All right, so I have a motion for that.
For everything else.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. All right, Rich, head it off, CA1A.
Well, I'll defer to Susan on,
Okay, Susan,
since
go
she
ahead.
pulled first.
Yes, so as the least experienced member of council, my question is, a resident has brought forward a concern with a decision we made recently, and in terms of process, having appeared in the consent agenda, is this something that we bring forward for discussion to perhaps entertain as a future agenda item for further discussion? I'd look to council to give me guidance on that.
What number are we talking about?
CA2D.
D,
The
okay.
email
That's,
from Carlos
no parking
Stilson.
signs, Spring Creek Park. I mean, also, I would support adding it as a future agenda.
I would if we could get a concise analysis or listing of what differs from what we put in place. I mean, I can pull that out from Carla's
Right.
emails, but it'd be easier to just have a little table or matrix that shows what she's suggesting based on experience.
That would be helpful.
Just so we can focus, if we're gonna do this, we can focus more directly on.
As well as staff response.
As well as staff responses, because, you know, there might be very valid reasons why
Right.
we're doing something and should continue to do it that way, and this is just a learning out process, or
Right, and I didn't go back and review the council, the CNET recording of that council meeting, so it was a little hard, so I appreciate that, that is exactly it.
Okay. So we have a consensus for future agenda items? You
So
guys got
putting it
that?
on the chair's plate.
All right.
Is that what I heard?
Yeah, future agenda item.
Thank you for council guidance.
I'm gonna lean on the manager to help me remember that.
Yes, yes, sir. Sorry.
Yes, Mom?
Mom? Thanks, Adam. Okay, Rich.
CA1A is just a very simple correction. I was not in attendance to adjourn.
The last page.
Yeah, yeah. I was not in attendance, so I therefore did not adjourn.
Jeez.
I told you.
Yeah, so.
That's
just
what you
need-
said you fixed it already.
Yeah.
In absentia.
But it shows in there as that, so I just need to correct it.
You were there?
Instead of copy.
It says I adjourned the meeting, so.
Copy and paste.
In absentia.
In absentia. Psychotically.
That's awesome.
CA3A, the big thing for that, being the numbers guy that I always get accused of, is that the budget's 24,000 and we're potentially approving 53,000.
Yes,
So-
let me give you a history of the project. That 24,000, unfortunately, I did not update it the last couple years. That's actually from probably 3 years ago. But once we got a engineer on board last fall, and he began design, it became obvious that there was a lot of appurtenances to put this thing together that I had not considered. And once he had design complete, I did ask him what, which was here just a couple months ago. I said, well, what do you think this thing's gonna go for? And his response was a really good bid would be in the 35 range, but it'll probably be over 50 something. I think is maybe not an exact quote, but it was obvious my 24 was bad. But it came in close to what he would have considered a high end of the range, but with recent increases in all the costs of the mechanical stuff. Like I said, there was just a lot more to, you just don't have a boiler and it's heating the water and or the glycol, and you have a heated bed or a deck. But we're gonna have sensors out there. The sensors will tell the equipment, okay, it's cold and it's snowing, or or it's cold and it's raining, and so that there's actually sensors on the bridge. There was a manager here who wanted me to have a system that you just went and turned it on and then you turned it off. I didn't say you, Adam.
Mike. Mike.
Actually, I kind of like that idea.
I've lost
Yeah, it was Mike.
I have lost so many arguments on this. I'm just done.
Yeah, I told the engineers, Michael Norris and Associates, I said, well, can we just get one where you just flick a switch on? And he just looked at me like, really?
Do we have an app?
I said, I had to ask, and you gave me the answer. So that's why it's considerably over budget.
So, thank you. But, so a couple of things. One, we don't like to approve things that significantly, although it's not, if it was 100,000 and it came in as 200,000, that is different than 24 is 53. It's still double as a percentage and all that good kind of stuff. It should be acknowledged that it's over budget. How are we paying for it? Is that just general
It would
fund?
be general fund reserves.
General fund reserves, and that doesn't compromise anything else, so we say that. And then the other part, will it be completed for this winter?
Yes. Yes, that was one of the things, I just had to laugh because I kept telling Adam, yeah, it will be done by May.
Which May?
Well, of next year. Came up during bidding, I talked to one of the bidders and I said, is any of this equipment something that there's this humongous lead time on? And that's the thing we've been running into, like a standard signal pole is 1.5 to 2 years.
Right.
But they said, no, that this is all
readily
available materials. It will be complete. I'm looking at Adam.
Yeah.
No, we're looking to have it complete by,
Okay.
I think the contract actually says November 15th.
Excellent. Okay. So with that, we're talking about something that is intended to extend the useful life of the walkway.
Yes,
and from a liability standpoint, improve that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so from that standpoint, You know,
the
I'm
extending of the
gonna throw my
walkway,
support
yeah.
behind
Yeah.
it and everything, but acknowledging that we did miss the budget number. We do have, it's not gonna impede anything else, and we're doing it for good reasons.
Yeah. So, council, anybody else comments to first CA 1A? I didn't ask that. Anybody else had any other comments to that Richard pulled? All right. And then CA 3A, any other comments to this, council? But my only request would be, much like Rich, I was gonna ask this one to be pulled too, was, that's pretty significant over budget.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that, maybe the narrative, just like we got, right, printed out or something like that, a little bit more background.
Yeah,
on it.
I could have mentioned that that
You know,
was an
like-
old budget. It was
Yeah.
prior to any engineering design of it.
This is
Yeah.
also the second bid. First
Yeah.
time around, there were no bids at all.
Oh, wow.
Good
And
info
and I
there,
did
too.
talk to one of the potential plan holders, and I said, why didn't you bid it? And they go, we were in the middle of a big bid, and we had to let that one lapse. And I said, well, you gonna bid it if we put it out again? They said, yes. And
Good.
So my follow-on question to that is, much Rich had asked, my question lies in, do we have any idea how much it is gonna be for maintenance costs of this ongoing maintenance, et cetera?
I
We
haven't-
put in a system that's gonna cost us thousands of dollars every year to run.
I can't imagine there's gonna be a lot of maintenance to it.
It's essentially, it's a closed system.
Yeah, it's a
right?
closed system. It's a small boiler, about the size of a microwave, from what I understand. And, these sensors, I'm sure they have a shelf life of 7 to 10 years if we get lucky. But no, I haven't that's something information I could have for the next meeting, just for a.
Yeah, I would defer to the kind of perhaps, I guess what Adam's getting, joked around about, what's a thermostat do, right, versus sensors, I don't know, but, if the sensors are needed, if the experts say the sensors are needed, that'd be kind of good to know, how much,
Well,
does the
yeah,
sensor
their
cost
point
to
was
replace?
if
Is
it
that
snows and
what's
no
gonna
one-
fail, right? Are we assuming that's gonna fail before anything else, the sensor?
Most likely,
Yeah.
yeah, and anything that's exposed to the air, but, the thing is, as far as a liability goes, it's gonna be kicking on when it needs to. If, we come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the bridge is already covered, and you turn it on, it's not, you have 6 inches of snow on it, it's not gonna melt that 6 inches of snow by 8 o'clock when
Right.
people come in.
Right.
Right.
And the safety of our staff is, can factor in that too. One mitigator on the maintenance, if the stuff's readily available, that gives it a much more opportunity not to be
That's a good
maintenance
point,
heavy.
too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah, and I trust you guys to come up with a maintenance plan for it, right, appropriately wise. That's all further I had too. Okay, so.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve CA 1A as amended, CA 2D, and CA 3A.
We have a motion.
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to old business. OB1, Residential Rental Ordinance O-23-06. Lindsay.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say I was a little late because we had Center Regional Planning Agency. We presented the official map, and they're going to be sending us a recommendation letter. So they were all good with everything on there, and kudos to the township, they said, for our connectivity and implementing our pedestrian facilities master plan. So it was a good meeting. So I missed the public hearing, but I hear from Mike that there were no public comments. All right. So then tonight, we're here to hopefully approve the residential rental ordinance. And when staff brought this to you, it was because we wanted to let you know how it's been going so far. And we talked about the intent and purpose. There was a consensus of council indicating they wanted to update the intent and purpose. So we did that. We considered Granicus, we considered the number of short-term rentals we have, the review process, equity, and safety when we updated the intent. So it was remanded to the Planning Commission. They agreed with the intent and wanted it to be scannably clear. So that is why the one definition changed for long-term rental, just to change more than 14 to 15 or more consecutive nights. We held the public hearing tonight pursuant to public notice, and if council so inclined tonight, we're asking you to approve these changes. And in 5 days, if you do, the ordinance will be
All right,
effective.
council, we've talked about this a few times. We do have a recommended motion. We can have discussion after a motion, or we can have discussion now.
I move to approve the changes to Chapter 160 residential rentals, including Section 160.2 purpose and intent and Section 160.4 definitions.
Yep.
2306.
02306
Is the ordinance.
is the actual ordinance number.
Okay. Not part of the recommendation, but as stated.
Yeah, it could say as contained in ordinance O-2306, and I would second that.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, no opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to new business. New business 1 is workforce housing ordinance. This is discussion item. Lindsay, again.
All right, thank you.
Your name was on here a lot.
It was, and I'm sorry I missed the first half of it. So, as you may or may not know, this year, the Housing and Department of Housing and Urban Development updated the AMI numbers. And so we think that now is a pretty opportune time to come back and consider our workforce housing ordinance. So I hung around a little bit after CRPC, after my presentation, because Jenna Wargo at Ferguson was presenting their workforce housing ordinance changes to CRPC. So it was about 10 minutes I figured I could spare. So I listened to that, and they also got a positive recommendation from CRPC for some of their changes. But, you know, she mentioned AMI, and I think that's an important part of this. So as we move on, consider that. We met with Missy, as the agenda says, Missy Schoonover. She's the director of Center County Housing and Land Trust. And we talked about the ordinance and how it's been going so far. Of course, she's using it right now at Aspen Heights, and we have 19, I believe, out of the 28 required workforce units occupied at this point. So it seems to be working. So the purpose tonight is for me to just kind of tell you how things have, what's good, what's bad, and what we should do next. So some successful aspects of it is that density is the trigger for workforce housing. Any proposed development that contains 5 or more dwelling units per acre, the mandatory requirement for workforce housing kicks in. And there's also the residential development threshold that proposes 10 or less dwelling units are exempt from the requirements of this ordinance. So those are the things that we feel have been working and are proved to work over at Aspen Heights so far. So areas for improvement. Typically, ordinances have an intent. And in this case, there really isn't an intent and purpose statement. So we feel that that might be something that's possibly updated or included in the ordinance. And I mentioned earlier the area median income range. Since that's changed, we suggest that we kind of expand, because right now we're at 65% for rentals and 100% of AMI for owner occupied. So we do consider that we expand some of those ranges, which would benefit a wider range of people in the community. Improvements for equality. So in April or May, I attended the National Planning Conference in Philadelphia, And a lot of the sessions were based on equity and how you can look at an ordinance through an equitable lens. So we tried to do that with this ordinance. And open space and parkland currently in the ordinance allows for the reduction or waiver of parkland. So wonder, if council feels that's an equitable exchange, because why, it's parkland is good to have. Susan, you just shared the article about loneliness and this epidemic we're having. And so I think, bringing people outside, especially in these cases, is important. And then regional approach. So as I mentioned, Jenna is working on their ordinance at Ferguson. That goes to public hearing, I believe, next week. And I believe the borough is also working to update theirs to capture that missing middle. And I think that's what we really want to do. So overall, we really don't feel that the ordinance needs many changes, but I think it's responsible to kind of take a look at it at this point and see how it's going. So if council wants to discuss anything tonight that's inside the ordinance, that would be great. And otherwise, a remand to the planning commission would be the next step.
Yeah, so before we start into comments and questions, so it would be safe to say, essentially what you guys are looking for is saying, yeah, we support editing this and, taking it back to PC, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, just a little bit of history that I'm not sure who has and doesn't have. The existing workforce housing ordinance that is presently in place was adopted, help me out, Lindsay, I think it was 12 to 15 years ago.
It was 2009 and amended in 2013.
Okay, so it's been a while, okay? And at the time, College Township developed one of the very first, if not the first, workforce housing ordinance in the center region. A lot of lessons learned over that span of time between 2009 and today. And I think that it's very prudent that we re-examine, reevaluate the ordinance. We do the things that Lindsay has identified as far as capturing the intent. And I think that there may be some opportunities, depending on the conversations to come, both at Planning Commission and at Council, there may be some opportunities to make potentially some truly substantive type changes that addresses the issues that we now face today in 2023. But the fundamental piece of this is an ordinance that has not been changed one iota since 2009, and a lot of things have changed. The prevalence of, well, not the prevalence, but at the time that it was adopted, there was not necessarily a universally recognized need in the center region for what is defined as workforce housing. And I think that we can probably all agree that in 2023, there's a very pronounced need for workforce-oriented housing. We were very fortunate with the way that the 2009 ordinance was structured, that we provided a provision both for owner-occupied units, which is really the way that the ordinance was initially envisioned, but we actually have a provision to accommodate for workforce rentals, which was unique. And that is actually the only element of the 2009 ordinance that has been implemented since 2009. And that is, again, as Lindsay had indicated with Aspen. So there was some forethought there. I think that we were very fortunate the way that the ordinance was structured originally. But I think that the time has certainly come for us to take a look at this a little bit more critically. We have a lot more information. We understand how some of these programs can and should work, and I believe that time is appropriate for us to begin a process which will likely be over a number of months to evaluate where we're at, what types of changes that we need to make.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, council members, so let's go around the horn here and give me your thumbs up if you support, revising as recommended by staff, and also add your comments and any questions you have. We'll start with Susan, and then we're going to go around the opposite direction.
Well, then, thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to whether I support a look at the ordinance and revising the ordinance, I absolutely do. So that's the simple answer, so I'd like to see that happen. I think that what has stood out to me, based on the memo that you gave to us, and now listening to you, Adam, and looking at some of the other information that I found on the COG website, I think it's really clear to me, working for one of the larger employers in the region, that quite a large percentage of our employees can't afford to live where they work, and that's a real concern. Certainly from a health equity perspective, that's a concern. And then, getting more familiar with, the median income and the ranges around that median income that is restricted, because quite a few of the employees that I'm aware of wouldn't fall into the category even at the lower end of the range. So expanding that range to include people who might not be able to be included at the lower end of the range is important. And I know, from the reading that I've been doing, looking at form-based code, that mixed use developments are important, but also a mix of socioeconomic classes in that mixed use residential area is really important. And this would support that going forward. And I know that our larger employers will be bringing in more employees. Certainly, the larger employees are only growing their businesses, so employers are growing their businesses. So there will be a need for more workforce housing. And I think that the point that you made in the memo, regarding equity and access to the various benefits of living near parkland, I was surprised to see that there was that restriction, that it was a blanket, give back to the developer. It's not unreasonable to work with the developers, and I can appreciate from what I've seen that I think the township does a good job of that, and that there are good relationships with developers. But, the opportunity to look at that, in particular from a health equity perspective, again, that is my perspective. And then, last but not least, yes, I think regional consistency is important. I think there's a wide range of median incomes across the region in our various municipalities, and that reflects quite a few things that are different from municipality to municipality. But if there's some way for the Planning Commission to look at that and address that and help me understand that better, I would appreciate it. So those are my comments.
Anthony.
I can support a remand for PC to review this. I'll echo Susan's comments. I have one other question, Lindsay. If you're unsure, that's fine, or if anyone can answer it. If you can refresh my memory. So I know there's waivers or reduction, but is there fee in lieu involved? There is fee in lieu.
There is, yes.
And the possibility of that fee in lieu, not that I won't say the municipality goes in the real estate business, but working with State College Land Trust and understanding how they operate with those monies to purchase and so forth. Maybe
Center
consider
County
that.
Housing Land
Oh,
Trust.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's fine.
They changed
Yes.
it.
Well, no, there is a State College.
Oh,
there is
okay,
a
I'm
State
sorry.
College
Okay, then I'm out of it.
Land
All
Trust,
right.
but there's also a county.
As the newest member of council.
But yes, the existing ordinance does have a provision for.
Has the newest member of council completed his comments?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, now to the most experienced member of council.
Most experienced, that worked.
Oh, boy. I'll take that. It's a lot better than what, hey, a comment, question, and then a comment, because staff is asking for comments on this. The first would be, what metric did we use to determine that it's successful? And I suspect we don't have one, so my suggestion is, as part of this exercise, and I do support going forward, that we develop one. It could be percentage of times it was used, given the opportunity. And I'm talking about not necessarily the things you're talking about, the range, you know, I'm talking about what percentage of developers who had the opportunity or required to do, you know, took advantage of some of the, you know, that kind
Utilization.
of stuff.
Utilization.
Yeah, based on utilization. And then you were asking for, it seemed like you were asking for some feedback on some of these. And mine would be regional considerations, yes, 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 and more yeses. I mean, all things equal, we should try to be consistent with the region if that works. In particular, the two areas you called out, which are income range, yeah, we ought to see what others are doing, and if possible, maybe collectively, you know, adopt a new range or edit it or whatever, based on their thoughts. I was kind of surprised that each of us kind of sets our own. I would have thought there'd be some kind of industry standard out there that everybody uses, but if we have the flexibility to set it, let's see what others are setting. And yeah, the open space parkland, yeah, if we inadvertently give away parkland for that and then end up with workforce housing folks who don't have, you know,
Easy access.
easy access to parkland, then maybe that is something we ought to revisit. Not saying there's an easy solution there, because you have to have the carrots. You know, and that's always one. Nobody wants to put in, besides nobody wants to put in sidewalks. Unless it's a floodplain, they don't want to give it up as parkland. So, or maybe we're onto something with sidewalks. No, never mind. We're going down that road. Those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks,
That's a carrot.
Rich.
Sidewalks, apparently.
How do I follow the senior man? Actually, the 2013 revision, that was my first year at council. So,
wow.
So, yeah, but I'm not as senior as Eric. In working down through the memorandum and everything, the intent, I put these into buckets on who should be supplying and everything. When I look at the intent, council should be providing that intent. And I think we've demonstrated a good team approach between staff and council in developing that and everything. And that helps planning commission in their evaluation to know what our intent was. The AMI, I'm in support of asking the PC for a recommendation for possible expansion of it. Similar with open space and parkland, you know, some type of recommendation. The one thing that comes to my mind though, with the open space and parkland, even if we try to do the right thing, they still have the opportunity to do fee in lieu, correct? For parkland. So the workforce still doesn't get the parkland convenient to them, potentially not convenient to them. Of course, we also have a very good public transportation system. And then finally, the regional consideration, as Eric said, all things equal, absolutely. But our duty is primarily to the residents of College Township, and so we need to review that and make sure it doesn't infringe upon something else that we have, or we may want to go further, you know. So, I mean, that's something to consider, to be in the backdrop of everything that we review probably. So, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
I'll round this one out. I think I agree with everything that was said. I support, you know, remanding this, and yeah, I think working through that intent statement will start to vet out things, for instance, like the parkland. Where does council feel, do we even want to offer a fee in lieu? Or if we do, but we want to steer folks away from it, maybe it needs to be raised, right? Because I don't think it's not terrible to pay the fee in lieu, if I remember correctly, from Parks and Rec Committee.
It depends if you have the land.
Yeah.
Land's kind of a thing.
Yeah, but yeah, so support that, support the regional as well, and the area median income range. Obviously, I think Rich is 100% correct. You know, I would be looking myself for, you know, recommendations from folks on that. They probably have more experience in those type of things. So, yeah, I think you guys have the support and consensus of council, yeah.
So how do you, I remember when we worked on the intent for short-term rentals, we prepared it and then shared it around with council. Similar process?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll come back. Yeah, I was just gonna chime in and make a comment. I think this is coming, to be honest, I don't think we actually need a remand tonight, given the fact that council is actually going to work on an intent. So this will eventually be coming back to council as the first step and to work through the intent. And to
Possibly
help,
remand then.
and then, yes, and maybe put a finer point on a potential remand letter that would then go to PC to begin their task of review. So you'll be seeing this again here over the next several weeks. We'll endeavor to get that back in front of you with at least the start on an intent statement, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, staff informatives. Staff, anything you want to highlight?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Council, anything you want to highlight? All right, council, staff, other matters. Okay, it's that time of night.
We should adjourn it from here.
Our favorite time of night?
Like, did you say motion?
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn since I had the last one.
Since you're here. I'll
We have a
second the
motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
We're adjourned.